Dear boys, long time no see. You haven't changed at all, Chris.
Neither of you, David. Neither of you.
Yeah. David, hello.
I don't believe it.
How are you?
I'm well. Lovely to see you. Whiter than white, Martin.
How have you been? Sorry, we've seen you for ages.
I know. We keep promising to see each other. And,
Yeah.
you know, I used to come to London a lot. In fact, I was in London on March the 11th, would you believe it or not, doing some Drapers Record Sustainability Conference, you know, chairing some meetings there. So it's a big mess. It's, everybody asks me if I miss the traveling, you know, because I used to travel like 300 days a year. And I got to say, I don't miss the day trips at all. But what I miss are the long haul. I miss that kind of fly to China, fly to India, States kind of story.
That's where I think you were doing a lot of your work. I remember your diaries and your notes. Do you remember you would have really meticulous notes?
Yes.
And they were probably done during those long haul flights where you had a chance to think without disturbance and kind of being able to work and focus on.
Not only without disturbance, but with a lot of champagne flying around. So
yeah.
I was high flying inspired, you know.
Yeah, to do it. I mean, I have to say, Chris was saying, because I didn't do a lot of that long distance travel, and we were just noticing how few you know, flights Chris has done, and actually feeling the better for it, not having all of that hassle.
You know, I still feel, I mean, I'm a typical idiot because I sort of got hooked by KLM's, you know, loyalty club. You know, I got to the highest level, like Platinum Elite Life in 1994 already. You know, I kind of felt guilty about supporting KLM. And I mean, as I said, I don't miss the day trips. There are a lot of hassle flying to, you know, and Zoom, as you know, has changed a hell of a lot for everybody. So the airline business will never be the same again. Never.
Well, this is my question, because first of all, two things. With the whole issue of flight shame, we should be feeling guilty about that. And given that one of our big themes throughout our kind of time together and onwards was sustainability and the environment. And now that you have Zoom, do you think consciously you will not go back to traveling, or will you go back when it's kind of relatively easy and okay to do so?
No, I have absolutely no doubt. I love traveling and it's part of my life, and you know, I sort of get, you know, shakes and feel like, you know, like if I don't get to Schiphol regularly. But I've got to say, I will not go back traveling in the original way. It's absolutely no point. It's a stress level. It's a conscience level. I thought KLM were very clever with their campaign last year when it came out. They said, "Are you sure you really need to take this flight, mate?" You know, I thought that was very reverse marketing, very clever. So I will just do the long haul because, you know, listen, the way we're talking, we've got so used to it. You know, you've done webinars. I've done countless webinars on this. Talked to people from Russia to China on this. So there's no way. And of course, there's a cost because every boss is going to say, "Do you really need to fly, you know, 600 euros to fly to London City from Amsterdam and back in one day?" It's ridiculous.
I mean, here's the thing that I was chatting to different, you know, people who are presenting or when you're delivering workshops and talking. And one of the things that came up is that how clients now dispute fees, because we were saying that previously, based on
does anybody pay fees anymore?
Yeah, we were saying
like
how you judge wisdom delivered by Zoom versus wisdom in person. Is it the same, and has client a right to quantify one as being more important than the other, when simply one is about presence, not about the content of what's being delivered?
I think that's a very good point. I think, first of all, we were in a mess before the pandemic because people didn't have a value for information anymore, and we're an information business.
Yeah.
And you know, it used to be $10,000 to fly to San Francisco and give one speech for 3 hours or 2 hours. It was no discussion. Then it became like 3,000 euros. Then the bigger the company, the more the argument. And in the end, basically, thanks to the Chinese, information became zero quantity for them. They don't understand the value of it. And I was surprised. So many people expected me to give free webinars because they had this concept, oh my God, the pandemic, everybody's going to forget you, you don't have any visibility, you have to be visible, you have to talk about your products, you have to be seen, you have to shout, you have to be intelligent, you know, you have to disagree with the Adel court and all the rest of it. And it was so I ended up doing a lot of things for free, and I got really a little bit annoyed. And I keep saying to myself, no more freebies. And I'm still doing it. Are you paying me for this?
Yes, of course. There's a lot of champagne delivered in a brown box that will arrive from KLM.
With my, yes, exactly.
Well, did you, I mean, one of the things that we've been curious about is how kind of positively and negatively has it impacted on your business? Like if you think about the past 6 months, what have been the things you've learned that you go, wow, that's been a really great teaching and useful, versus the things that you just think, I wasn't expecting this, and it's caused like, not damage, but really has had you rethink the business in a different way?
Well, it hasn't. I keep saying this about the pandemic, you know, we say, oh, change, reset. I said, it's not at all about it. We keep all of us, like you use the word acceleration. I had troubles before the pandemic. I am very much an analog boy. It's not that I dispute digital, but I'm very analog in what I feel is coffee table intellectual presentation. So, of course, I ran into major problems because I knew I had to look at digital in a new way, but it wasn't urgent. And then suddenly with the pandemic, since all my circulation is handled by wholesale, and wholesale, as we know, is a no future, whether it's clothing or magazines, all this kind of story, all the distributors got into problems. So they weren't selling, exhibitions weren't happening, no single copy sales. And I had, you know, very sophisticated arguments from the Swedish, you know, Hennes Masson's kind of people. We love your magazine, but we're not in the office, we're working from home, we can't share it. So can we have it in digital format? So I am now facing major decisions about, not in terms of my expensive trend books, where I have a price level, whether it's casual athleisure, which is very in, youth culture, color with the Pantone color book we make together. Those are fine, that kept its market, but the magazine side, so I'm really having to look, reduce quantity, link it to a digital bridge, digital platform with updates, so all the classic things. But what I'm determined not to do is to overthrow the analog base. I could go digital and from digital make analog, you know, like, but I don't want to do that. I want to be like all the traditional mags, Vogue, you name it, analog with digital.
Digital, with it.
And that's a big dispute,
Because it would be hard to imagine. I still think there are magazines, so magazines about color. So, you know, the Pantone colors, if you think about that, you need to physically see it. I think something like Viewpoint.
That's not true anymore, Martin. We're going to have one of our stage fights.
Yeah,
I would have argued that a long time ago, but the steps in digital color reproduction are enormous.
Right.
And there's a lot of very good digital reproduction. You know, people like Hugo Boss, everybody's into Industry 4.0. So a lot of it's CAD/CAM, digital pre-production. So a lot of pre-production with big fabric companies, where they send them their color files, every swaps the information. So they're doing, what we're seeing in the industry, actually, everybody's argued about digital textiles, digital fashion, and there's two sides of it. There's one side, which is the catwalk side, and then there's the other side, which is the physical side of making collection. And what the digital will do is replace the cost of making sampling collections. So everybody spent about 300,000 euros making hangers of fabrics, which will cart round to see you, say, hey, Martin, Chris, what do you think? Now they will make digital patterns, and then from the digital send you the physical, so that will save a lot of cost and time. And then we'll switch to the physical halfway through, say, okay, I really like that one. I need a feeler of Chris's sweatshirt, melange grey. So that's going to change a lot, and color will also be part of that, so it's changing. But in the end, you need the physical, but not in the beginning. That's what's changing.
But do you see the whole impact now of the number of shows and the way we're showing? Because again, there's always that debate, and it seems to happen every decade. When something goes wrong in the economy, we're told that there'll be no more catwalk shows. It'll be done virtually, digitally, blah, blah, blah. And then back again, we come to Paris and to Milan and to New York, and it seems to be the same old show rolled out once more.
I want to take this point up, Martin, Chris, because I think it's everybody's got very excited. You know, you're not as old as me, but I've been through quite a few recessions, you know, 1994, less is more, and all that kind of story, concrete architecture, Paulson. I had the oil crisis in the 80s, which closed down the synthetic fiber business. So, you know, and of course, the whole Lehman Brothers and 9/11. So every my God, the world's going to change. Oh, I'm so excited. You got Naomi Klein, and everybody says, yes, the green future. And I never believed that because I think leopards don't change their spots. I'm a bit of an old goat and cynical about human behavior. And you know, as soon as it closed down, everybody was like queuing outside Primark, Zara, and of course Dior at the other end, but no in the middle because, you know, inequalities grow bigger, so the middle tier of retail. So, sorry, back to your question about
the catwalk shows. So will we see them back
so
again? Or?
What has happened is our sense of timing completely has changed. So it's not just the catwalks, it's how we feel about time has changed. It's not just a question of immediacy, like, you know, this whole thing, I want it now, I want it now. It's also about the Netflix complex, you know, that I can choose to do things in my own time and at my own time. And in the fashion business, we had, again, as I said, the reset side, which was the Dries Van Notens and Chalian, said, yes, this has to change. The system is stupid. Why would it be closed in December when it's still snowing? And, you know, sales start too early and all the marked out business, et cetera, et cetera. I think people need to understand that the structure of our business has been going in place. It's very old-fashioned, but it has a reason. And we all understand the purpose of speed, and we all understand reducing rendement and markdown. So what I found interesting was when we all went into these digital catwalks, I was very excited. Everyone said, whoa, how is this going to be? How is Paris going to look in the menswear digitally? How's the Haute Couture going to be and all the rest of it? And I have a lot of respect for Vanessa Friedman from the New York Times. And I was reading her, you know, she was saying, well, I spent a week sitting in front of the screen watching the shows. And she made all the right points. Yes, it's so true. It's a waste of benzene, carbon dioxide flying up and down, everybody moving from cities, and everybody queuing and everybody waiting, and it's all about build a stand of 30,000 and knock it down. It is ridiculous. But she suddenly said, but actually, I bloody missed it because it didn't have, and you know, you've all been to fashion shows, and it's something you can't explain to someone who hasn't been to a fashion show. It's like going to a football match, a real football match, you know, when you see the green of the turf and that energy, not today, but we used to. So it doesn't have that energy. And I was, you know, the marketing pull-through was about a third of what a normal catwalk show does when it was shown digitally. So I think without the big boys, without the Keirings, without LVMH, without Chanel, it's going to be a very long fight. And these big boys have decided, we don't care about Champs-Élysées, we don't care about Carolina Mode Italian. We do it our way. And I want to show a digital catwalk show based on Capri on the same night that everybody's out marching about Black Lives Matter. Who cares? I am Chanel, my terms, my way. So I think it's not going to happen in the way everybody thinks. Yeah, very long.
Now, David, earlier you mentioned human behaviour, and of course what brought us together in the first place was, I think, this absolutely insatiable interest in what makes people tick, because you had created Viewpoint magazine, which had the tagline, think and act with the mind of the consumer.
Yes.
We still continue to use shamelessly as a way of introducing some of our thinking, because obviously, you know, Viewpoint for us was the launch pad into a journey, as it were, into the future. But with human behavior always at its essence, because it was always about this idea of trying to understand what was going on in the mind of the consumer and in the mind of society, and how was it changing. And so I suppose one of the questions that we wanted to ask you is, having done this for so many years and across different ways of thinking about lifestyle and the way that people are changing, you know, you said earlier that the leopard just doesn't change its spots, but do you think there have been fundamental changes to the way people behave, or the way that people think? I mean, human character might not change, but do you think the way that we think has changed, or most certainly our consumer behavior, our consumption patterns?
I think, first of all, that it's a polarized world. And I always talk about it in terms of newspapers. You know, there are the Guardian readers and the Republica readers and all the rest of it who are very conscious about moving into a more responsible platform, whether it is sustainability, climate change, consumption, whatever it is. But I always say, you know, we get sidetracked by this because I keep asking, I go to give speeches, you know, my favorite question is, who likes Kim Kardashian? And of course, because they're all Guardian readers, nobody puts up their hand. But I can't understand it, because 95% of the world loves Kim Kardashian, and only 5% love Emma Watson, you know, even though we all love Emma Watson. So we talk to each other all the time, and that's our big problem. And that's the problem about marketing today. everybody says, whether I'm running a department store, I have to follow the consumer. The consumer is the boss, And we've been saying that for about 30, 40 years, right? With the consumer, you can't design without understanding your customer. But I still feel we have a kind of hierarchical view, We are like the eagles on top of the mountain looking down, and we shouldn't be. We should be actually on the ground floor, 360-degree vision, and being holistic about the whole thing, responding immediately on and understanding them completely rather than from our perspective. It's definitely getting better. I am amused and stunned because when we started, there were few futurists around. And we all want, but now I don't know. Someone told us 60,000 futurists in the market. I have no idea. So I don't know where we're going.
There's an industry and a federation, and I think that's what's interesting. But I often wonder if futurists suffer from the same problems, that they look to other futurists rather than looking to the customer. So we're building on ideas that are being created on the top of the mountain, and we're making that mountain higher without actually, as you say, to use your metaphor, swooping down and going undercover and seeing what actually ordinary people are doing when we talk about purposeful living. And as you say, there are thousands of people queuing outside Primark on the day it's open, fighting and not wearing masks. Very purposeful.
So listen, who's responsible, who's not responsible? So, as I say, we are too busy preaching to the converted. And I don't know, I think it would change, but it's not going to happen overnight.
But what hope for retail once we come out of this? Where once we, in 8, 12, 18 months time,
yes.
Where will retail be? What do you think?
Well, the first thing that is on my mind at the moment in terms of being a consumer is hygiene. This for me is the word that has replaced sustainability or
wellness. Yeah.
So hygiene is very important, and people are very thinking about, I'm not talking now about the people who are like, I've missed my Primark or I've missed my T-Max, I can't, but the average, let's say, middle consumer, right, rather than the younger consumer or the rest. So they're very concerned about, okay, is the place I'm going to hygienic, space, controlled, and well done? Secondly, I don't want to waste time or risk myself taking a tram, trolley, bus, train, metro into the middle of town to visit Selfridges if I don't know what I want is in stock. So I really want to know what's available in stock all the time. Then we have our principle, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's stupid to even talk about it, but building that omni-channel, building that internet presence has become 10 times more important now than it was before the COVID, because there's no doubt we're not going to go back to that at all. The service part is still very, very important. I don't agree with what we're talking about, for example, in some of your recent things on LSN. I do feel, you talk about luxury and digital, I get very nervous about all this talk about digital. Everybody's talking about digital fashion, digital clothes, digital. I think it's all very exciting and very lovely. And you're talking about online digital luxury and immersion and all these kind of experiences on core. I just wonder how many people that appeals to. It's big talk, like a lot of things we talk about, because we always have to make the stories. We talk big, but when it comes down to the reality, the famous Carling story, $220 and all this kind of story about digital, I wonder. But I think retail has to be an experience. I read a wonderful article in the Financial Times about department stores, because if you look back at the history of department stores, their architectural role, their societal role in places like Chicago, New York, everybody building these mega stores with the biggest organ in the world in them, in some stores. So it's like, the old Selfridges, you went there because it was. So if we get that excitement back, I think they do have a chance. The key thing is definitely to build on the personal service. They've really got to make that consumer. And I watch Josephina shopping, and there's some very clever sales ladies who don't push, but are you right? What do you think about COVID? All this kind of story. So we know that, we said it before, but it's putting the customer right at the center of your thinking and building around it, the omni-channel, don't waste my time, but I want to come.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think the digital fashion is, I always think it's, those spikes where you're pushing out into a new market. But realistically, you look at the age group of still the older luxury consumer, you look at the more affluent that wants to be a bit more precocious in their purchase. They're not going to be buying the digital version, they're for their avatar or for their emoji or whatever. And I kind of go, these things take time. As we know, it takes probably about 3 decades for a particular trend to set
through.
become standard. So it's not going to happen. I think the servicing is vital, and it amazes me that now, given there's an opportunity with the reset to get service right and to look at experience in a different way, that we still speak to, and I guess you're the same, you speak to CEOs and you speak to senior leadership teams who are still talking about when things get back to normal, back to whatever new normal is. And I go, well, what about the new extraordinary? Wasn't there an opportunity to now get back to the new extraordinary and really rock customers with service and with experience? And yet you seem to be doing that.
But I think, Martin, I agree with that, but there's another problem that I forgot to add is location. I think one of the things that might seriously change, and I really love Nordstrom, not because they used to give speeches there, but I've always admired them as a department store, of being local, sort of forgetting the flagship concept. Do I need a Madison's, Avenue store? Isn't it better? Because again, I don't know, Martin, because Chris, we all had this slow down, go out to Devon, go out to Dorset thing. I don't remember how many years ago. Was it after 9/11 or after the yeah. So we had all this kind of downshifting out, and it was talking about suburban migration again. But I think this might be serious. So, one of the questions I really think is the most exciting question at the moment is, what is the future for urban centers? If we have this migration of business, of the rich moving out of the Barbican and all that kind of expensive, and all that building in Aldgate East, I can't believe it, £1.5 million, about 60 square meters, If that, who is going to occupy the new urban centers? Will it be local? Will it be youth? Yeah. Will it be very exciting thing? So I think location is a very important thing. And I think these Nordstrom stores have been very successful in the States, Yeah,
because I guess they're smaller and they focused on, edited, curated and service. And also, I think you're right, because the big question we get asked by certainly developers is, the future of CBDs. How will they work? Will we be creating satellite versions of others? And my question is, well, if you're doing that, there's already a model called shopping centers, which have sat there for years, and, like the periphery malls and that. Surely what you're going to see is a reimagining of the shopping center, blended use of hotel, theater, WeWork style spaces that sit in, the Manchesters, the Leeds, the suburbs, and none of the bigger buildings. Somebody said, imagine you're pushing those big buildings down into the ground, and across the country there are routes popping up, which are their little ancillary outfits. Because I think, and maybe you kind of have a different view, but certainly when you look at the big cities, a lot of people are talking about, not that they won't return to the office, but they're saying we'll now look at ways to return more effectively, and the reason for returning will be different. So we used to go there to work. If we know we can do this at home or closer to home, what does the building become? Is it more, social space, lab, incubator, collaboration? I mean, I think your point is so valid about the being there makes a huge difference to how we relate and create. And I think certainly in the creative industries, and this is something I ask people in corporate world, in the creative industries, when I've asked people, what is it you miss most? They say collaboration, the culture of meeting and rubbing off. And I think, gosh, once you take the desk out of the way, which is why we go to offices to sit and work, then what are you left with in a corporate space? You have to go to sit and think, to debate, to meet. And maybe at that point, those edifices become spaces that are more about cultural interaction, in which case do we need that size of building, like a 300,000 square foot building, when we're only there 3 days a week? So that I think will change things.
The Economists, I remember, because they've done a lot of this, they've argued profoundly and deeply that without collaboration, the creativity level and the innovation level definitely goes down. We all need that. On the other hand, reversing it back to moving out of centre, you know, I was quite impressed by Harrods. You know, when Harrods decided to make their beauty stores more suburban, they've been opening Croydon and the rest of it. I think, you know, we talked about the demise of a shopping mall, but the trouble with a shopping mall is it's full of the predictables. It's full of the budget retail chains. So when you have a bit of sex in there, like a Harrods beauty salon, you know, you think at things, you know, okay, oh, wow, you know, I'm going to a Harrods beauty salon. So I think it's, I don't know how successful Hudson's was, you know, the Hudson's principal in New York because of the pandemic. So I don't know, you know, everybody tried that concept there of sort of moving it up market and moving it into more limited types of companies and more special. I don't know if it worked or not, but I think this could be something, especially if the British government helps town centres on, you know, the tariffs, the parking, the rates, and all these kind of stories they keep promising.
Yeah.
Have you got your bike yet, boys? Have you got your bikes?
Yeah.
No, still not yet.
Not yet. Can't drive, but we can cycle.
6 month waiting list. You see, get on your bike.
I know.
Just as one of the questions, because we always say about our forecasting prediction, what do you think was the wrongest forecast that we made when we were working with you, like both on Viewpoint and also at Future Laboratory? What was the one? Because we actually have a show which we do called Back to the Future, which is about where you revisit a forecast that has been really badly wrong, and then you go, well, if you got it right, or better still, what did you learn from that? So do you think there was a forecast that we managed to get wrong, or at least you thought was a bit peculiar and interesting?
Well, I was first of all going to say, you know, I was going to pick out the 3 viewpoints that I thought were the best, you know, the most accurate, the most clever, the most on time. Because one of the problems with forecasting is not only talking to thin air and being like coming from heaven like Sybil, it's the timing. You know, you can have an idea of what's. So I don't know if you can see this. So the state of man.
Man, yes.
Very good about a changing man, you know, not only metrosexual, but about the whole makeup, the whole clothing, the whole thing. Brilliant, absolutely on board, sold it very well. Rainbow Youth, absolutely spot on, again, very, very good.
Favours,
Then the last of the big successes was the new luxury. And I've never forgotten your 5 levels of luxury. It's always stayed in my mind. What are the 5 levels of luxury, you know? Status, tribal, emotional, da-da-da-da-da. The ones which were not so successful, probably because people didn't understand them, was Blur. You're absolutely, I mean, I can't say it was wrong, but it was like kind of very techie and like speed and into, I don't know. You know, at that time in the 90s, people were not really understanding what all this meant. So that's too Martin Chris clever, right? The next one, same kind of thing, because nobody knew what the hell a network was in the 90s. So, you know, you were always too far ahead of us on that, all right? So I don't know if you can see it properly. And another one which didn't sell very well, which was a bit difficult, was The House. I think people, you know, maybe
and I actually thought that as well.
It was right about community, but wrong time. People were not into community at all at that level. They were into I'm a selfie girl and all the rest of it. So it kind of rang the wrong bell. But my favorite of all has to be burlesque, right? And it's the wilder shores of love. Now, this created, I don't know what it taught people. I don't know if you can see it all, but it was absolutely beautiful. It was, I don't know what it taught people, but there's a lot of titillation in it and all the rest of it. So, and we had that wonderful Swedish model, the 70-year-old lady, which Vodafone used later. Love and all the rest of it. So this one, and I think I remember Martin and I standing up together in Gothenburg Opera House discussing burlesque. I don't know if it was the right trend at the right time, because we were coming out of less is more, like mid-90s. It was like beginning of the beginning thing. I don't know, because everybody, I don't know if people were ready to discuss their sex toys quite so openly then as they are today. But, you know, 20 years ago, it was a big deal. But it was the issue that I had the most fun with, and people had the most emotion about. So, but boys,
I agree. I don't think
it's been a pleasure to work with you. It was always good fun. We didn't always agree about things. I have to tell you about, if you remember, my biggest stand-up fight, I think it was with Chris. about a publisher's responsibility, we were talking about New Love and the whole story. And I remember you wanted to post a picture of two girls kissing in a burqa in the park.
Yes.
Yes.
And Chris went to, it was almost working out when I did one with the Adel Court, she had this dog suckling a breast. And it was like, to the wall, you know, this is the principles of, you know, like, this is the principle of freedom, we need to discuss this, and everything. I said, I can't publish it, I'll get killed. No. So we've had our ups and downs, but it's been fun. We've also had some nice dinners, and quite a few drinks together, exactly. from Sydney and Melbourne all the way to the Ivy.
Now, we're nearly out of time, so we're hoping that you've got a question that you want to ask us.
Well, I was going to ask you the very thing you were talking about, you know, what's your biggest mistakes? But actually, what I'd like to ask you, because I know you both as colleagues, and I won't say super personally, but I know you quite well. I've always wondered what you would have done if you hadn't got into this forecasting business. I mean, I can't see you staying at Fashion Weekly and all the rest of it. What, you know, if you didn't have all this around you, what would you actually be doing?
Yeah, I know the answer to that easily. I had two ideas. One was to be a barrister. I always fancied the whole issue.
Look at Chris's face.
Forecasting is always about debate, debate and alternatives and examination of forensics and detail, you know, underlying bigger picture issues. And I always thought, actually, I would make a great debater because I'm quite good at taking an opposing point of view and being able to defend it and then suddenly switch to the other side and do the same thing. And I think that the kind of barrister would be both defense and prosecution, which is quite rare, but I think I could take up equally each side and come out with a good answer. And I always think forecasting is absolutely about belief in understanding what the evidence is showing you, but as soon as it's not showing you that, and there is another truth and another way to look at it, you need to switch. There's nothing worse than, and I won't name the particular forecaster, but it's always about stones, and it's always about Hessian, and it's always about linen, and I kind of go, you know, there is a point when it isn't about that, but that grasping view that you hang on to it so that the world come around to your thinking sooner or later, and there's always a pebble in that chute and a windswept beach and somebody with slightly kind of bird's nest hair. And I always worry about that, you know, I said the whole point of being a barrister would be you could prosecute one or you could defend the other. So that's what I would be. I'm not sure about Chris.
Oh, I'm
right in the middle, Martin, right in the middle.
I don't know if I've got
Chris.
one.
David, thank you again.
Thank you.
And as always, good to chat. We don't do it enough. I realise having had this conversation with you, I'm missing all those conversations we've had.
Missing our dates in Sweden.
We'll see you very, very soon in
person. On that happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Thank you, sir. Take care.